We are moving to one of the big stories in Gaelic Games at the moment, and that was the protest at the weekend by Dublin and Kilkenny ahead of the Leinster semi-final game about the wearing of Skorts. This story is rumbling on. We hear that maybe some kind of interim fudge might be available to the Kamogi Association, but they're so far refusing to confirm that. I'm delighted to say regular pundit Sarah O'Donovan is with us, but also welcoming to the show for the very first time Tess Howard, who's been through this very same experience with the sport of hockey. Tess, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. Thanks for being here. Well, thanks for having me here.
Can you maybe walk Irish viewers through your experience and just how your campaign ended up being successful? But before that, why was this an issue for you? Why did you think, and when did you first realise that actually Skorts was something that you needed to talk about?
Well, field hockey is a sport that traditionally has always worn Skorts for women, yet we train every day in shorts. And I'm an Olympic hockey player. I've played for my country for 6 years, and I've always worn shorts to train, and so has everybody else. And that's kind of pretty unanimous across the domestic game as well. So there was this disparity between playing and training, and that didn't really sit very well. I ended up doing research for my dissertation into the effects of gendered sport uniform on girls' participation in sport at a very young age. And it was having huge impacts. One of the most underrepresented reasons that girls drop out of sport is sports kit. Only 1 in 4 girls feel confident in their PE kit. Things like this really matter about how a girl relates to their body, about how they see sport as a place that they belong. So I was there with like my own sport in, let's say, 2022. We had just won the Commonwealth Games, and I felt so uncomfortable in the uniform that I had to wear, the compression tank top and the skort, but I felt so comfortable training. So it just got to a stage where I had the research, and I published the research in 2023, and at the same time was like, do you know what, we need to change this, and we need to have choice, because there's no longer a reason. And I always come back to this one question: is the uniform practical or patriarchal? And if there is a practical reason to wear a skort, then that's your right to wear a skort. But there's not, because otherwise the men would wear it. So it's a patriarchal reason. And, you know, you can strip all of that away and just say that we should have choice because we train in shorts every day.
Can you talk to us a bit about the research? What were the main findings to back up so you obviously had the instinct that something was going on, but then when you surveyed over 400 people, the results come back fairly comprehensive.
Yeah, well, 70% of women had seen girls drop out of sport because of sports kit and body image concerns. 60% of those women wanted shorts at their school when they were younger, and 100% of them wanted choice, more options. And those findings continue to be found in youth sport trust surveys. 58% of girls want more options. That increases as you get older. So it is an issue around how that girl is feeling in their body. And it's always been talked of as a girl issue, but really it's a policy issue, and it's based, the issue is all around the environment, the policy that we create, the uniforms that is there to enable that girl to participate, as opposed to it's just a girl issue. Why are they being so, frustrating? Just make them wear whatever they wear, things like that. It just should never be spoken in that way, and that's what it continually is. It's always said to be the girl's issue.
So you did the research and published it and started to talk about it. And what happened then?
Well, I had a line in the media that said I want to go to the Olympics in shorts, and that was quite catchy. So we had more media interest, and England Hockey changed their policy straight away. This was even before I'd published the research. I went to them and sort of asked, can we just change the language? Because currently it just said everybody had to look uniform. They never specified Skorts, but Skorts was a tradition, and people thought that Skorts and shorts would look different. So we put in a clause that said that you can wear shorts, Skorts or skirts in the same team so long as they look uniform. And so after that, there was a clear precedent and a clear line that meant that we could wear shorts because it would be deemed similar if they were, if they looked similar. So then we got together as an international team So Great Britain got together and we decided in 2023 that we were going to be the first team to do this. And we were going to ask the Federation of International Hockey to change their policy to match England Hockey's. And we did that. We wrote a letter from our CEO and our captain, endorsed by the team. And it was literally 1 month later, they came back and said yes.
Right. That's pretty amazing. And kind of how a campaign should work. A bit of research, opinion from the players who are actually in the field, literally playing the game, and the governing body listens. Sarah, you'd think there's a template here for the Kamogi Association to be like, okay, we hear you and we've listened and we're going to move, but we're not quite at that stage just yet, it seems.
We're not. I wonder what it was that forced Camogie president Brian Malloy to ring Marty Morrissey in a panic at 10:30 last night to get himself on primetime to suggest that there would be a compromise in 2026. Was it Senator Alan Kelly suggesting that they may have to come before Oireachtas? Was it Senator Ivani Quillen saying that there was a rule that would allow a relaxation of the rule? I think the Camogie Association in the last number of days have been flailing. This isn't unusual for them, Tess. We've had other instances where they've been behind the curveball. And I think last night on Instagram, on my Instagram was full of Dublin Camogie players wearing shorts in Dublin for senior league matches. And I think ultimately the horse has bolted and it's too late for the Camogie Association. So whatever they've decided now in terms of a compromise, I don't think it's going to be enough. And players are going to be as strong worded in terms of their response and say, we want to wear shorts to Croke Park.
The timeline's rapidly diminishing, Sarah, isn't it? Because like you said, originally it was that we can't talk about this or vote on this again until 2027. Then you have the compromise of possibly 2026. But this could be all said and done as soon as this weekend, because reportedly the Waterford and Cork players are planning to do the same as the Dublin and Kilkenny, their Dublin and Kilkenny counterparts. But this time, I guess, Sarah, that they won't come back on the pitch.
Well, yesterday, Hannah Looney was very strong on this, and the Evening Echo ran the story last night, citing that Dublin and Kilkenny had gone to the point of abandonment as their point of, I suppose, escalation. And Cork and Waterford, for the Munster final, which is taking place at the Rag and Tip this weekend, are willing to abandon the game in pursuit of shorts as a choice.
Yes.
Again, from Tess's point of view, we're offering choice. And look, before Congress last year, we had a meeting in our club in Ballygarvan. We voted for choice. Our club delegate took this to the Cork County Board, and our view was not represented at Congress. And I know this because Cork chose to vote as one against choice. So they're not representing us as players, and I know that. And that's where the frustration is. It wasn't a democratic process, to my mind, because it didn't represent the viewpoint of my club.
Well, they interviewed a few under-12s, wasn't it?
Correct. And I actually think there was a great rebuke from the Great Britain delegate who asked whether they would be repolled at 16 to ask if the Skorts still covered their modesty then. That just sums the whole thing up. And look, in the last number of years, Ger, I've spoken to you about this last April. It's tradition, Tess, that's a word they keep using. Aesthetically pleasing, how the Skorts look. I've had 4 iterations of the Skort in my 30-year career. Every few years, I would update the Skort to the latest iteration that was perceived to be more comfortable. But some of my teammates never bothered. So there was 6 colours of red on the pitch at any one time. We weren't uniform. We all wore different Skorts, and we weren't forced to buy the latest Skort. So they weren't of the same design style and comfort. It was personal choice, so it should be personal choice now to wear shorts if you choose to.
Tess.
Well, in hockey, you can't tell. You really can't tell. It's actually a little game that we all play because you can't tell on TV who's wearing what. And the point of uniformity is belonging. There was actually research done recently that said that 80% of people feel like if they wore different lower half items, they'd still feel like a team. This sort of idea that uniformity and tradition has to mean a particular thing is just an excuse. And also it's just a pair of shorts. It's become so much more political than it needs to be. It's just a pair of shorts. So I got to the stage where I was going to to wear shorts at the Euros no matter what. Not a lot of people know that. I was going to, but we changed the policy so that we were in half and half. And that's the thing, like when it's such a beautiful thing, we ran out in 8 pairs of shorts and 8 pairs of Skorts. And it was a really big statement on choice. But what I decided to do after that was no sport has to go through what I had to go through. So I built the Inclusive Sportswear Charter for national governing bodies to sign up to so that they can base their policy on inclusive decisions. And the second point on that charter is choice and empowerment, because the only thing that matters is performance, participation and enjoyment. So I invite the Kamogi Association to sign up to that charter. We already have England cricket, England hockey, England netball signing up to the charter to deliver choice in their sports. And so there is actually something for them to do. I'm giving them an opening. Why don't you join the Inclusive Sportswear Charter with those national governing bodies and more following to make a statement?
There was a point there about that Sarah made about how there's a view from people who've lived their entire life with the Skorts that actually Liz Howard was quoted today in the Examiner. She's a legendary administrator, broadcaster, public relations officer.
Former president.
A well-cut and made Skort looks feminine and smart. So when you're talking to people who have that viewpoint, Tess, there's two things that there's going to be a strike this weekend if this doesn't happen. And I don't buy there's going to be a fudge next year. You know, I'll gladly pay a Tuesday for a hamburger today. So go ahead and strike and abandon the game. That's one way of doing it. The other one is some kind of soft diplomacy where you actually try and convince people, what are you doing here? How do you talk to those people, Tess?
Well, you know, we have had it in hockey where there is sort of questioning, but then you sort of bring it back to what do you train in? And the likelihood is they'll probably train in shorts. So there's you know, a lot of my team wear Skorts and that's their choice. But we agreed as a team, as a Great Britain team, that we wanted to be in a team that supported choice. Because if my performance, and this is where it got down to, my performance was being affected, half of our team's performance and confidence was being affected. And if that's not a performance decision based on to be the best you can at your sport, then I don't know what is. We're talking about 1%ers here always in sport. And if the way you feel in your uniform makes you unconfident and not wanting to play, that's how I make it. That's the argument that I make. I also make the argument that the view of our sport needs to change. So in hockey, you know, traditionally a very sort of middle-class sport. We have a big relationship to private schools, and the Skort comes directly from those institutions. So what image are we showing of sport and of hockey? So I make those two arguments when I say we need to have choice, because we need to have more people included in our sport. And it's often the case is that they might say, well, I feel more comfortable in a Skort. And I say, well, that's great because you feel more confident in a Skort, and that's your prerogative. It's totally your choice. But imagine if I had to tell you had to wear shorts and you didn't want to, you'd probably find that very frustrating. So those are sort of the arguments that I go along.
I think your research also found that the gendered sports gear had a significant impact on young girls deciding. I know you mentioned this already, but could you just give us a bit more detail on that? Because I thought it was a really compelling argument. It's like, you know, you have to wear a specific type of clothes, otherwise you can't do this sport and you're not feminine.
Yeah, well, traditionally, sport is this masculine domain that's very hard for women to infiltrate. And the only reason why we have to wear gendered items now is because in the Victorian times, we had to wear them to be accepted, to be feminine enough to play the sport, because we had to constantly affirm this femininity, this womanliness. But we're in 2025 now, and we don't need to do that. So what gendered uniform continues to do, it's one of the only policies that segregates based on gender at school level. age 5, you have a girl put into a skirt or a skort and a boy put into shorts. That creates a barrier. Not only does that mean that shorts are now considered to be masculine, but it means that there is a gender barrier in sports. There's a gender divide. So what it does for young girls is socially conditions them to realize, well, to internalize that what they wear, how they look, matters for their acceptance in sport. So it's no wonder that when women get older, they just thought, they begin to think, do you know what, actually, I don't need to do that. But we're so socially conditioned at a young age to believe this because of the gendered segregation at schools. It starts with schools and in all these different sports and clubs. So the major impact is body comportment. That's what it's called. It's how you move your body, how you feel. And a girl is constantly checking if that skirt's riding up. They're constantly feeling, you know, if their shirt is too low, they're moving their body in a certain way. All of these different body movements internalize that girl to feel a certain way. And that links directly to women's respect and their sort of place in society. So it might be something small like a pair of shorts, but it has such a big impact on how girls are respected at school and in sports.
Tess, your study and findings changed the game. Did you find that England hockey and the governing bodies were more collaborators or opposition along the process? Were people along with you in the majority?
Totally collaborative.
Right.
And that was the most amazing thing. In fact, our CEO helped us write that letter to the Federation of International Hockey. And you know what's even more amazing is that it's had a dispersive effect across other national governing bodies. So we see shorts in Holland, we see shorts in France, and these national governing bodies are seeing what we have done and they're inspired by it. Because you know what? The French Federation had to change their policy because a mum emailed in saying, I've seen what's happened in England and my daughter is going to quit hockey if she can't wear a pair of shorts. And then they realize it's a participation thing and it's about inclusion. So you look at people who play football aren't naturally going to go and play hockey unless they can wear whatever they want. And it's sort of really easy questions. But in terms of it's always been a collaborative nature. The biggest thing that I found that I needed to convince myself that I had a voice and that my comfort mattered. And what I'm so proud of these players for doing is realizing that they do have this. And that's what Inclusive Sportswear wants to be. I want our charter to be the thing that every club can sign up to say, we back this because we believe participation and performance comes first in whatever you wear.
Okay, Sarah, the CEO collaborated, helped with the wording. The Kamogi Association, would you have the same fate?
I'm going to give them an opportunity here to put their best foot forward in an environment where they're very much under the spotlight now. Am I convinced that that compromise last night was their final offer? No. I think they can go one step further. There is a rule that allows the top brass, the Ard Corla, to relax a specific rule within the organisation if it's to the detriment of the association. And I believe that when you end up on prime time at 10:30 on a Tuesday night after a segment about Gaza, you probably know that you need more than to offer a compromise of changing a rule, potentially, possibly in 2026. So there's a working group, as they outlined yesterday in a statement. And I think rather than going out to Europe to test new Skorts, the working group should actually be talking to Tess Howard about joining or the potential to join the Inclusive Charter. And I think that will be a much better use of this working group's time. So perhaps, Tess, if I got you the number of the Kamogi Association working group, would you be willing to have a chat with them this week?
Absolutely. I think it's about creating an opening for a statement that goes beyond we concede to the players, because you're not conceding to the players, you're changing your rules for the future of your sport. And that's what England hockey and England cricket and England netball are doing. They haven't got it all figured out. There are still lots of things to be done, but they're committing to a principle And that's what's most important. And I would love for them to join. I think it would be the positive end to this story, as opposed to whatever headline they think they're going to get.
That would be amazing.
And there are loads of options for better quality sportswear. I know, Tess, you actually have a company that has become invested in making solutions. So it's not like there aren't very easy, accessible solutions to give people hope in this. Just on the point of whether or not they should strike this weekend, like, if there's going to be some fudge where it's next season, is that enough? Or do you seize the moment now and take the momentum behind the campaign and the publicity? Imagine if you were to lose a Munster final. What would the repercussions of that be, Sarah? Oh, sorry, Tess. Go on if you wanted to say something.
No, it's a pair of shorts. Just get over. Like, I played my national finals last weekend in a pair of shorts. Imagine if I had been yellow carded and not been able to play. You move so far beyond what it used to be that you can't. You laugh at what it used to be, you know? And I think this is what's going to happen in several years. You will look back at this and laugh that we had to go through all of this, because that's exactly what happened in hockey, and it's exactly what's going to happen in netball. And the tendency is just to keep moving forward. So I would why wouldn't you just make an exception for the final?
And from now on, you did say there, sorry, not a lot of people knew that you were going to play in the Euros with shorts. What would the repercussions been if you did play in the Euros with shorts?
I've got no idea. It was I had got to the stage where I was so uncomfortable and upset. And I didn't know that a lot of my teammates were also feeling really uncomfortable. But, you know, it gets to a stage, I don't know. And to be honest, I don't think anything would have happened, because our policy said uniform.
Right.
And I think they would have accepted that. But we went above and beyond to show that we were not being disruptive. We went above and beyond to change the language to include shorts and skorts. But I have had lots of conversations with the European Federation who unanimously back the choice. And they said they never intended for the policy to only be for skirts. And in many of their grassroots, people do wear shorts. Before this policy was brought in, but they were really happy to clarify what they meant by uniformity, and that does mean choice, and it was just us being able to do that. So I actually don't think anything would have happened.
Okay, but it's eye-opening how it's opposites in many ways, because Tess, when you were talking with England Hockey and the governing bodies, they were collaborators, but then the practicality of the situation was that Hockey Brand didn't manufacture shorts for female players, so that was the first stumbling block. Whereas in Camogie, Sarah, it was like the Dublin and Kilkenny players last weekend took to the field with shorts. I was like, oh, where did they get their shorts from? They're all uniform. I was like, of course they train in the shorts. So it's like literally everything is ready to go. Like,
it's part of our season kit. Like, when you join up with an inter-county team, you get kit. My club team had shorts designed last year for training. It's a ready-made solution. And look, her history was made last night in Dublin. For the first time in the history of the Camogie, all of the senior teams in Dublin lined out in shorts. So they normalised it in one evening. And my Instagram, as I said, is full of photographs of happy women wearing shorts.
Yeah.
One evening.
Well, can I go back to the timeline that I mentioned at the start? Was that initially we thought, well, this isn't going to be brought back to the table officially until 2027. And there's the compromise last night, 2026. But like, the realities of the situation is, take the Cork and Waterford game this coming weekend. If they do the same as what happened last weekend, but they don't take to the pitch, well, then it has to change straight away, because then there's no game played. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then if that's the case, they have to rewrite the rules. So they work backwards, if you get me.
I think everyone is very comfortable now with the idea of the game being abandoned. I have Munster medals. Cork players have Munster medals in abundance. That Waterford team does not. So it's quite a brave step from this Waterford team to get to a Munster final and give up the opportunity to win a Munster medal. But they're willing to do that because they feel very strongly about this. And as Tess said, it's just a pair of shorts. And actually, last weekend, when the Kilkenny and Dublin players were togged out, the spectators didn't see them wearing shorts. It was only when it was flagged by the referee and they were removed from the pitch that the spectators realised that they were wearing shorts and not skorts. You know? What
do you think will happen in this match, the Cork Waterford game, Sarah? Do you think that it would play out that the game is abandoned, or do you think that the authorities will step in before that to change something? Because it feels like this time next week we could be in a totally different landscape.
So the Munster Council had already written to the the counties to say that if they did tog out, the game would be abandoned.
But they might change.
So,
do you think that they'll change that because it's a growing movement
Tess,
now?
Yes.
Well, here's the alternative: forfeit the game, play your own game. Just play the game, forfeit the game, and then play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they might
There you
get
go.
forcibly removed from the pitch. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Like imagine that. So you got to. Yeah, I think you just.
No, but it's right. You can
take the moment
lift
now
an imaginary trophy at the end if you want. Yeah, you're right. Like it is.
But force
it is
the
a step.
moment now, because otherwise, like I do feel like there'll be. We'll set up another committee, and then next year there'll be another vote, and it's like, well, are we actually going to leave it to a vote again?
Well, here's what I think: it's that this whole conversation is absolutely fine for them to be questioning all of this if it was 5 years ago. But since then, we have had sports in the news about this very issue. Everybody knows Norwegian volleyball, but not for the right reasons. These sports kit and inclusion policies have majorly moved in the last 5 years. So it's okay. We can say, you know what? 5 years ago, this has been fine, but things have changed, precedents have changed, and there is now a charter that you can sign. And we didn't know that this was the new norm. We'll back the new norm, and there doesn't have to be anything more than that. It can just be a simple, it is literally your get out of jail free card.
Right. Well, fingers crossed something happens sooner rather than later. Tess, your story is incredible. Thanks a million for sharing it with us. And Sarah, great to have you back. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Tess.
Thank you.
Cheers, folks.